Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. Joseph Parker's promoter Duco Events has broken its self-imposed media hiatus to throw some shade at Anthony Joshua's promoter Eddie Hearn and even at Joshua's record itself. So Duco boss David Higgins, he has told New Zealand media they won't be lowballed by Hearn or anyone else for future fights. And context is key here. Joseph Parker gutted out a win over Hughie Fury in September to retain his WBO heavyweight strap. And it's fair to say it was a bit of a stinker in terms of the action. It just wasn't a great style clash, with an awkward and mobile Fury making an aggressive Parker miss a lot. And sure, both guys were doing some good things from a skill perspective, but it wasn't a classic. However, a win is a win and Parker moves on, and he is now in a position for a voluntary defence, which Duco is shopping around the place for the highest offer. He's got that up his sleeve, and an opponent will be announced in the next week or two. And since that Parker win, Eddie Hearn has been telling anyone that cares to listen, Parker's stock has dropped. His value was hurt by that performance, and that the appetite even for a Tony Bellew fight for setting that one has also diminished. For me, some of those comments, as I've mentioned previously, they're more designed to drive any offers to Duco down. It does make sense. Offer what you're willing to pay and drive a hard bargain. Then in recent days, as the Anthony Joshua and Deontay Wilder stuff was kicking off, Hearn was quoted as saying that a Parker fight could potentially happen ahead of a Wilder one. But it was also said in the same breath as, the stock had dropped comments. So now, Duco Events, which has been on radio silence for the past 10 days or so, as it looks to set the next Parker fight, and I know this because I tried to get comment from them twice, and the second time I was met with the response, as I said to you before mate, we're not doing media comment at the moment. And for fullness, I tried to get a response in relation to Deontay Wilder's comments trashing Joseph Parker on the Boxing Voice, offering him career advice saying that you have to fight the best and be ready at all times. There was a certain sense of irony in some of those comments. But anywho, the constant jabs and prodding from Eddie Hearn has clearly riled David Higgins, and he's spoken to stuff.co.nz. He says, it's become apparent that Eddie and his two bigger named fighters are all levelling various criticisms at Joseph Parker. The boxers suggesting he is beatable and Eddie talking down the fight a bit, probably wanting to pay less. We are not going to have Eddie Hearn lowball us because we are from New Zealand or because he didn't like the Hughie Fury fight. I think everyone should step back, take the emotion out of it and look at the facts. The facts are that boxers in Joseph's resume like Andy Ruiz and Carlos Takam are avoided and arguably better than many of the boxers on Joshua's resume. Vladimir Klitschko accepted. Joshua has been laid out on his back more than once. Dillian Whyte shook him up. Klitschko put him down, and there are rumours around incidents in sparring I wouldn't want to speculate on. Joseph has never been put on his back in fighting or sparring. In boxing parlance, it means that he has got a good chin. Joshua's style is more square up, come forward, so the question for Eddie Hearn is, if Joseph Parker and Anthony Joshua stand in front of each other trading, who is more likely to go down? Based on the facts, it looks like that might be Joshua. Look, it could go either way, and Eddie will know that. It's the heavyweight division, and any heavyweight can knock out an opponent with the perfect punch. So that's why we're quite excited about a Joshua possibility. But it is a fight we would only take if the deal was right. We won't be lowballed. So certainly some strong stuff there indeed from David Higgins. So he is the owner of Duco Events. They promote Joseph Parker, and he was speaking to stuff.co.nz for a piece that they've run. Link in the description. So where to start with that? In terms of the lowballing, it is definitely clear Hearn will not want to pay a premium for Parker to fight Tony Bellew and even Anthony Joshua. It was actually reported in the New Zealand media the other week that the problem of making another fight with another of Hearn's fighters, Dillian Whyte, was Hearn wasn't prepared to pony up enough cash. Other fighters have also accused Hearn of lowballing them for a White fight, with Lucas Brown and Derek Chisora the most vocal. What I make of that is, and I've mentioned this before, Hearn is expecting fighters like Parker to take a haircut on their purse for a White or value fight, simply for the carrot of an Anthony Joshua fight later on. I mean, ultimately, Hearn wants to make money, maximise his revenue, and sort of make sure the other fighters in his stable are helping him generate those Benjamins. But it is a fine balance, and Eddie Hearn's got to be very careful here, because what we are seeing is rival fighters and promoters are giving someone like Dillian Whyte the wide berth. And as a result, he's been on the shelf all year. If he's on the shelf, he's not making money. He fought Malcolm Tan a couple of rounds, but nothing special. Tan is an over-the-hill journeyman. He certainly didn't get paid big money. And it certainly didn't really do anything for Whyte's reputation. I mean, his value in the division, arguably the longer he's out and not in meaningful fights, starts to diminish. And as for value, I mean, you could argue besides a David Hay rematch, what were the realistic options for value beyond a Joseph Parker fight, if there was one to be made? Just back to Whyte though, in terms of him, if the money isn't there, but the risk is, because he's a dangerous fighter, it's not going to stack up for most people, most promoters, most fighters. Even a veteran fighter like Robert Helenius, I mean, that was who Hearn was seemingly lining up as a backup option to fight Whyte for October the 28th on the Joshua Pulev card. I mean, no doubt someone like Helenius and his team were looking at it going, well, the money is not huge, but if he loses, his career is pretty much toast, down the drain. To the point where Higgins needles Joshua's record. Now, this is an interesting point because it is so subjective. I mean, you minus Vlad, and I'm not even sure you can really do that because someone's on your record, you're on their record. But for argument's sake, minus him, you've got Charles Martin, Dominic Breazeale, Dillian Whyte, and Eric Molina. Parker has Dimitrenko, that's Alexander Dimitrenko, Carlos Takam, Solomon Homono, Andy Ruiz Jr. and Hughie Fury. For good measure, throw in Wilder's names of Stavern, Molina, Spilker, Areola, Washington and Duopa. I guarantee the debate around whose record is the best out of those three from what I've just named, I mean, it'll be one of the most commented things for this video in the comment section. It is so subjective. I mean, if I'm looking at that, I mean, on some days I can lean one way or the other, but mostly, I mean, they're kind of mostly even. I mean, the Vlad name, that is the thing that sets Joshua apart. And Higgins, in terms of mentioning that Joshua was chinny, well, he certainly was going for the jugular there. I mean, it has been something that's dogged Joshua his entire career. He was laid out in the amateurs, apparently inspiring from at least David Price and possibly others, and we've seen him rocked by Whyte and on the mat from Vlad. From all accounts, Joseph Parker, on the other hand, has a decent chin, has never been down in the amateurs or as a pro. But that's the thing though, and this again, it doesn't mean he can't be hurt, and some would say Joshua may have faced a better caliber of opponent in general in the amateurs and probably in sparring. But even then, you can argue the toss. I think the real question for me, though, is can Joshua knock Parker out before Parker knocks him out? Some would say that Parker doesn't have the power to knock Joshua out based on recent performances, but I'm not buying that. Parker has been in some tough fights against some tough opposition. And it's not to say that Joshua hasn't. I mean, he's actually been dispatching them. In that Vlad fight, great fight. But as Higgins says, hit anyone clean and anyone can go down. And it is understandable that Higgins would go after Joshua in the way that he has, in questioning his record, questioning his chin, just raising a few of those things that have popped up and some of the things fans do like to latch on to. I mean, he's doing that because Hearn has been downplaying Parker, so this is just really a bit of retribution and repaying the same favour. It's certainly a fight I want to see next year. I mean, for me, I hope the politics of boxing and the money side don't get in the way and that we see a unification. And I don't even care if it's not a Joseph Parker unification. I just want any unifications. So Parker Wilder, Joshua Wilder, or Joshua Parker. Any combination of those fights is what I want to see. It really would be good to see how good these guys really are. And I know guys like to sort of put those fighters in slot 1, 2, or 3. Class someone as the best and someone as the weakest. This whole thing of weakest champion. Yeah, I'm not so on board with that, because you can make arguments either way, and people do. And I find it such a hard exercise, because in terms of who they fought and where they fought, the styles, you know, things are not equal. So it's hard to sort of judge them in some respects. But in some ways, I do think they can all beat each other. I guess if I was pressed in terms of a form guide, and this is just a form guide, I'd probably have Joshua slightly ahead of the other two, just because of the Vlad win. But not by much. I mean, as I've said, Joshua hasn't quite answered all the questions we have for him, but he has answered some. But in terms of answering questions, neither have Parker or Wilder. We don't know everything that we want to know about these guys. Whereas someone like a Vladimir Klitschko, he was an open book. We pretty much knew all his strengths and weaknesses and how he would respond in a given situation. All three of these guys, it's, you know, it's still a little bit up in the air on certain things. And certainly for Deontay Wilder, I know I've taken a lot of heat in recent days from Wilder fans who haven't liked me poking holes in his record and calling him on some of his nonsense that he's been saying in social media. He is a top fighter. He's got great power. How good he is, I don't know. But I do want to see that. I mean, that's why I'm saying put him in a top fight. Let's see how good he is. And in some respects, and I'll just finish with this, it's kind of nice that the respective fan bases can make a case for each guy as being the best or being able to beat the others. For me, it tells me that things at the top of the division are relatively close in terms of the fighters themselves and the quality. And it does mean that other guys could also possibly come through and beat them as well. I mean, for me, that's not such a bad thing. That's exciting. We could see, you know, some really good fights and close fights. I mean, is this the best area in heavyweight boxing? Probably not. But it is a very interesting one. What do you make of it all? Drop a comment, hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.